You have spent months counting calories, getting in more steps, and making healthier choices. As a result, you've lost weight. But then suddenly it stops. That's the dreaded weight loss plateau. But you're in luck, because in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can break out of that plateau over the next 30 days. And if we haven't met before, I'm Maria and I'm a registered dietitian whose weight loss advice has been featured in leading media publications around the world. Why? Well, because I have helped hundreds of people break through this exact issue. So if you want me to help you do the same, just keep watching, because I'm going to share the 5 steps that you need to take. And if you are feeling particularly desperate, then pay close attention to number 4 and 5. Now let's get the bad news out of the way first. It is almost impossible to completely avoid a weight loss plateau. Why? Well, because weight loss is never linear. It's not a straight line, and in fact, it's more like a wavy roller coaster. But here is the good news. You can control how long that you stay stuck. And at the beginning, weight loss, it feels easy. It's like taking your bicycle and freewheeling down a hill. But as the pounds drop, things start to shift. And research shows that when we lose weight, our hormones change. Our hunger goes up and our calorie burn goes down. You are now a smaller person, burning fewer calories, yet craving even more food. So suddenly it's like trying to pedal that same bike back up that hill. There is also this thing called set point theory, or settling point. And this theory proposes that our body is programmed to maintain a homeostasis. In other words, it fights really hard to stay at your current weight. So the main thing to remember here is that you won't continue to lose weight at the same rate towards the end of your weight loss journey as you did at the beginning. Things will often slow down, but that does not mean that things are not working. Patience is key here, my friends. Now, first things first, are you truly in a weight loss plateau? Because just to be clear, a plateau is not something that happens overnight. It usually shows up after several weeks, if not months of very consistent effort. And when I work with clients, I usually define a true plateau when there is no weight change for at least a month, and you have been genuinely consistent with your efforts. And if you do plateau, I want you to consider these things before you make any drastic changes. First, where are you in your menstrual cycle? Because it's very normal to gain weight or see the scales stall at certain points in your cycle. And this can be due to hormone shifts and water retention. Then, have you been unwell recently, or have you had any recent acute injury? Because acute illness or injury can cause inflammation too. Are you very constipated or bloated? Because this can also cause the scales to creep up, even when your habits haven't changed. Have you had extreme stress or poor sleep lately? Because this can all mess with your hunger hormones and your metabolism too. Or what I see quite a lot is, have you maybe started going to the gym or started training recently? Because it's surprisingly very common to see a small increase on the scales when you do start working out. And it's not fat, it's just your muscles holding onto a little bit more water. And they do this while they repair and adapt. So it's completely normal and nothing to be worried about. But here is the tricky part. The scales doesn't always tell the whole story. And I also want to encourage you to reframe how you think about a weight loss plateau. So many people get disheartened, and I often have people commenting on my videos saying they've lost like 20 pounds, but now they're so upset because they're not losing anymore. And 20 pounds is a huge weight loss that you should be very, very proud of. And if you're no longer losing weight, but your weight is holding steady and you're maintaining this new lower set point for a few weeks, that is actually a huge, huge win. It is not a failure. Weight maintenance at a new lower weight should also be celebrated as an achievement. Sometimes I even recommend my clients to take a pause from actively pursuing weight loss and enter into a stage where they just focus on maintaining that weight. This is particularly beneficial maybe during busy holiday periods, or if you're going through maybe a new job or a new life change and losing weight maybe just can't take the priority right now. But maintenance is a skill. And if you can hold your progress, that is still huge forward momentum. Now, if you're regaining the weight, that is a whole other conversation. But if it's stable, it's definitely not something to be disheartened about. And speaking about zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, that brings me to the sponsor of today's video, the Body Pod by Hume, because I want to talk about body composition. Because this is a much bigger conversation, especially for people using weight loss drugs like Ozempic or Wegovy, or for anyone who loses a large amount of weight in a relatively short period of time. And here is a simple example. Imagine that you had 2 people and they both weighed 80 kg. Person A has 20% body fat, but person B has 35% body fat. the same number on the scales, but completely different bodies. And that is because muscle takes up less space than fat. So even if they weigh the same, person A will likely look leaner, feel stronger, and have better metabolic health. And because muscle is more metabolically active, they can usually eat more without gaining fat, which is kind of the dream. And that is why body composition really matters, especially if you feel like you've hit this weight loss plateau. Because sometimes your weight doesn't change, but under the surface, your fat is going down and your muscle is going up. And irregular scales just won't show that. And that is where a body composition analyzer comes in. And the one I've been testing is the Body Pod by Hume, which is like an in-body scan that you can do at home. And it goes beyond just showing your weight. It gives you insights like fat mass, muscle mass, and visceral fat. That's the fat around your internal organs. And it even gives you segmental measurements, so you can track changes in your arms, legs, and torso. And this kind of information can be helpful on those mentally tough weeks where the number on the scales isn't budging, because it can show that your body is still changing and you're still making forward progress. Now, what makes this one different is the handle, because it measures from both your upper and your lower body, which gives you a much more complete and accurate picture. And we all store fat differently. For some, it's more in the hips and the thighs. For others, it's around the stomach. So if you want accuracy, you need to measure both. And in the app, you'll see a humanoid diagram, and that breaks down your muscle and fat changes in your arms, legs, and torso. And what impressed me as a dietitian is that in independent testing, the Body Pod's results for muscle mass and body fat percentage were 98% in line with a DEXA scan. And a DEXA scan is what is considered the gold standard method for measuring body composition. It's one of those big machines that you see in a hospital or in a clinic that some people are a little bit scared to go into. And these are great, but they are expensive, inconvenient, and they use a small dose of X-ray, so it's not something that you should be doing very frequently. Whereas the Body Pod is something that you can use at home as often as you like and actually get value from. It syncs with Apple Health, Fitbit, and its own app that gives you an in-depth breakdown. And you can also track all of this over time with visual graphs. Personally, I focus most on the body fat percentage and muscle mass, because that is where real progress shows up, especially if you're strength training or on a fat loss journey. It also pulls in your sleep and activity data and uses AI to give you gentle suggestions on what to focus on next. Sleep was a big one for me, and I've linked it in the description box below along with my discount code MARIALUCEY. My code is valid for 7 days and it stacks on top of the Hume's sale, so you can save up to 50% off. And if you're in the US, it's HSA and FSA eligible, so you might even be able to get it covered by your health insurance. Now that said, for some people, too much data is overwhelming, and that is totally okay. You could keep it simple with regular scales and then check in every few months at a dietitian's office or another medical clinic that offers scans like this. And that way you're making sure that you're not losing muscle while dieting. And if you're over 65, it's actually recommended that you do get a DEXA scan, typically every 2 years, and earlier for some people if you have osteoporosis in the family. And this is to check your bone density, which is really important. So it's worth asking your doctor about this and asking if they can also check in with your muscle mass and body fat percentage when they do this too. And then you can compare it year on year. And of course, weight is still only one metric. There are other ways that you can track progress too. Look at how your clothes fit, look at your energy levels, look at your strength, look at your quality of life. Because progress is not always about numbers. It's about creating a life that you actually want to live in. Now, when you reach a plateau, you may have lost all of the weight that you will lose on your current diet and exercise plan. So stop and ask yourself if you're satisfied with your current weight, and if you're happy to just stay in this new period of maintenance for a while. There is no harm in doing this. And psychologically, it can actually be very good to take a break from dieting, especially if you've been on a very long weight loss journey. But if you do decide that you want to lose more, and I'm guessing you probably do if you're watching this video, in this case, you're going to need to adjust your weight loss program. And these are the 5 steps that I want you to work through. So number 1, I want you to reassess your habits. It's not jumping straight into more restriction, because often the issue isn't what you're eating, but how consistently that you are doing it. So I often go back to basics with my clients. Are we still doing the things that were working before? Have portion sizes started to creep up a little bit? Are we eating out more or adding in little extras that we're not accounting for? And this is very normal, by the way. We are only human. And if you've been on a longer weight loss journey, it makes sense that some habits have started to loosen up a little. It doesn't mean that you have failed, it just means that it's time for a quick check-in. So what I'll often ask my clients is to track their food closely for 2 to 3 days. It doesn't necessarily have to be tracking calories or macros, it can just be literally writing down what you're eating. And I don't get people to do this every single day because that is not realistic. But when your progress stalls, even doing 2 to 3 days of very honest food tracking, this can be surprisingly eye-opening. We'll often start to notice patterns like grazing more in the evenings, skipping protein at breakfast, or just generally eyeballing portion sizes a little bit more. Or it could be something like eating your kids' leftovers after breakfast, which surprisingly a lot of people do. And just because it's kids' food, it still has calories. But it's not about being perfect, it's just about getting curious. And sometimes that tiny little bit of awareness is all that we need to start making progress again. In fact, there was a study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and they found that it was lack of adherence, not metabolism, that was the biggest contributor to these weight loss plateaus. So it's not that your body is broken or your metabolism has slowed down. You just might need to start tightening things up a little bit again. Now, my next point is that you might need to eat less, but not necessarily in the way that you might think. So if you have reviewed your habits and you think you are being consistent, but you're still stuck, then it might be time to make a change. Because the reality is, as you lose weight, your body burns fewer calories, and this is just human physiology. You are literally now a smaller human being, and a smaller human being needs less food every day. So the deficit that might have worked for you at the beginning, that might now be your maintenance calories, which means that your weight will plateau again until you adjust something. But here's where most people go wrong when they tell me that they're in a plateau. 9 times out of 10, they're actually not in a calorie deficit anymore. And I'm telling you this as your friend, your big sister, someone who has your best interest at heart. Because what people often don't realize is that it's your weekly calorie average intake that matters. And I'm going to say that again for added emphasis. It's your weekly average calorie intake that matters. And let me explain with an example. So let's say your aim is to eat 1700 calories a day, and you hit that target Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But then the weekend comes. And I'm not talking about big, massive binges or anything, but you start to eyeball portions a little bit more because it's the weekend. Maybe you have a glass of wine with your dinner, or you have a few extra snacks thrown in at a barbecue on a Saturday evening. It still might not seem like anything excessive in your mind, but suddenly that Saturday and Sunday intake has now become around 2,500 calories. And you're probably shrugging it off because you don't think you overdid it or anything. And you kind of probably didn't. But when you go back and average that out over 7 days, you're now eating 1,930 calories each day. And that's probably what your body needs at maintenance. So you're not at a deficit. And that's why your weight is staying the same. So your body isn't broken, you're just not eating in a calorie deficit anymore. So instead of trying to be more restrictive Monday through to Friday, it might be about evening out your intake over the course of the whole week. And you don't need to be obsessively counting calories. You don't even need to count calories. There's other ways to do this. But you do need to learn how to implement a gentle, sustainable calorie deficit. Because the goal isn't just to eat less. The goal is to eat in a way that supports your goals and also your life. And weight loss journeys, they do get harder. At the start, I often have people who come to see me and we can just start implementing some healthy habits and they will start to see the weight come off. But once you get further along and you become closer and closer to your goal weight and you're eating pretty healthy at baseline, you do then find that you need to be a little bit tighter and tighter. Now, the other thing that you can do here is to also look at the composition of your foods, because calorie in and calorie out isn't as straightforward as it sometimes seems. So are you eating a lot of processed foods and not eating a lot of fiber? These are things to consider, because your body doesn't process 2,000 calories of ultra processed food the same way that it processes 2,000 calories of whole foods. For example, and I'm just going to use some rough numbers to illustrate this, if you eat 2,000 calories worth of highly processed foods, like potatoes, crisps, white bread, sugar-sweetened beverages, your body is likely going to absorb nearly all of those calories because they are easy to digest and they are low in fiber. But if you eat 2,000 calories worth of whole food, think beans, veggies, oats, nuts, fruit, these are high in fiber and require more energy to digest. Some of the calories are lost during digestion and your body can't absorb all of the calories from the fiber. So you may actually absorb fewer calories overall, say closer to 1,800 for example. So this is one reason why all calories are not truly equal in how they can affect your body. Now the next step is if you are being consistent with your food and with your habits, and it just does not make sense to try and lower your food intake anymore. Like if you're eating 1,700 calories, for example, and you're finding that really, really, really hard, it doesn't make sense to then try to drop it to 1,500 calories. You're not going to be able to sustain it and you're going to probably end up binging, overeating and gaining weight back on. So in this scenario, you should leave your food intake where it is and look more closely at your movement. Firstly, what you want to do is upgrade your workouts. If you're not currently exercising, now would be a good time to start. But if you are, you're probably going to have to start to look at the intensity of the workouts that you're doing. because it's very easy to get into routine, and I do this myself. You're doing the same thing every week and your effort levels just naturally start to dip. You're just going through the motions of going to the gym. Like I tell myself, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week. So I go to the gym 3 times this week, box ticked. But just because you walked through the gym front door doesn't mean you're really pushing yourself. Maybe you're spending the first 5 minutes chatting to a friend. Then maybe you're scrolling through Instagram in between workout sets or while you're waiting for a machine. Maybe you're leaving the gym and you haven't even broken a sweat. So you might need to just check back in with yourself here. Are you really still pushing yourself? Are you lifting heavier over time? Can you feel yourself getting stronger? If you've been lifting the same 8-pound dumbbell for the last 3 months and you haven't seen any improvements, that is a sign that you're doing something wrong. So if you are feeling a little bit stuck, it might be time to shake things up. This might be try a new class, try a new workout regimen, maybe get the help of a trainer, but your body adapts quickly to a new exercise program and it learns to produce the same effort whilst burning fewer calories. So you may need to try something new every now and again. Now, the other thing to focus on, and I've mentioned this in some of my previous videos, is don't underestimate the power of walking, because it really is one of the most underrated tools for fat loss. It's very accessible, easy to recover from, and it doesn't spike your hunger levels in the same way that intense cardio does. And if you can get even 1,000 extra steps in every day, that's 7,000 steps over the course of a week. And that is the equivalent of a day's worth of steps for many of us. Now, after this, if you have been in a plateau for maybe 4, 6, 8 weeks, and you have been consistent and you feel like you haven't gotten anywhere, the next step that I would be asking you to do is to go see a dietitian, unless you're already one of my clients, because then you're already seeing a dietitian, so that would make sense. But if you're not, I would really encourage you to do so. Lots of people, they get nutrition plans off of the internet or from personal trainers or nutritionists, and I'm not trying to bash any of these, but do not underestimate the power of actually seeing a good dietitian, particularly one that specializes in fat loss, because a dietitian can guide you on best practices and can give you a tailored nutrition plan that actually suits you. And I don't mean just a 1,500 calorie generic plan from the internet. I mean something that is going to consider your age, your hormones, your routine, and most importantly, your preferences. And just because somebody has calculated out your macros for you does not mean it's personalized. A proper nutrition plan should be something that you can genuinely enjoy and stick to. And that's the difference when you work with a good dietitian. And in some situations, it may even be wise to actually eat a lot more. Sometimes your body needs a little bit of a shake-up to get out of a plateau. But this can be quite a scary thing to do when you're doing it on your own. And then next, if you have seen a dietitian and you've done all of the above, and again, maybe it has been that 4, 6, or 8 weeks, this is when I would want you to be going to see your GP or your doctor. I would want you to be having some blood work and some tests done. And this would help to rule out any condition that might be the cause for you no longer losing weight, as well as discuss maybe any other weight loss options. Because if there is something unclear, like maybe a thyroid issue, then this will need to be addressed. Or maybe you need some additional help, like a weight loss medication. And I'm not saying weight loss medication is the answer for everyone. It's by no means a magic pill to fix a weight loss plateau, but some people may genuinely need that extra bit of support if a weight loss medication is indicated. And these are all conversations that you should be having with your medical team. But there is no shame in asking for help and getting extra support if you need it. Now for step 5, I want to make sure that you have set realistic goals, because I make a lot of weight loss content on this channel, but there is a balance that needs to be had. Losing some weight can hugely improve somebody's health. It can also increase their confidence and their overall quality of life. But there is a point where more and more weight loss just is not realistic, and it doesn't really give you any more benefit. In fact, always striving for this can sometimes just make you miserable and miss out on the whole purpose of life, which is enjoying it. And I see so many women who have a specific number in their head. It might be the weight that you were when you were in college or before you had your first child, and you want to get back to this weight. And yes, it may be possible to do this, but to be honest, you would need to get very, very strict with your diet and with your exercise, because the reality is it does get a little bit harder as you get older. So to do this, it might mean isolating yourself that little bit more, pushing yourself to a point that isn't really enjoyable, not being able to enjoy as much quality time with your kids, not being as nice of a person to be around. And then even if you get to that number, sustaining it might be very difficult. And it might mean that you don't really get to enjoy life to the fullest. So sometimes it is about weighing up what matters the most. And again, remember my example at the start of the 80 kg person. You can look smaller and weigh the same. And I know it's tempting to aim for a specific number on a scales, but sometimes that number is not realistic for you or your body. or for your lifestyle or your current phase of life. And that is okay, because even modest weight loss can lead to huge improvements in things like your blood pressure, your cholesterol, and your overall metabolic health. And if you've already improved your diet and your exercise habits, you have already improved your health. Now, as a thank you for making it all the way to the end of the video, I want to let you know about my free recipe ebook, which I have linked in the description box below. And I'd recommend following me over on Instagram for many high protein, calorie controlled recipes. And if you have been stuck on a plateau, please comment below and let me know what has been your biggest challenge and which step you're going to focus on first. And if you've enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you will enjoy this one next. As always, stay happy and stay healthy, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching.